So Drew, this one is kind of for you. It was talking about the nav bar and making it scroll down. I don't know if you could show an example of like when you scroll, it changes, like just being able to change things and scroll, like as you scroll and the different methods of doing that in Builder. I know we don't have anything like built in specifically for it, but maybe you could talk about how you do that, explain you remember what the question was about that one?
Yeah,
With the nav
basically
bar?
it's like a standard fixed nav, where it's like it's not fixed to the top of the page, and then as soon as you scroll, it fixes to the top, like kind of changes layout a little bit sometimes. I
Exactly.
answered that question and I said to change a class on the scroll event, which is correct. But then I realized, do we have like I don't think we actually have a built-in scroll event that would work for that.
Hmm.
So really what I would do to do this is, well, I don't know if it would probably take a custom action and it would be pretty easy where you would listen for a scroll and check, if the scroll position is greater than 0, add the fixed class. But
Mhm.
like, I don't think we can do that in Builder right now, right? Like I could maybe write custom JavaScript to get it done.
I think you'd have to
Uh,
put a scroll event. I think it's kind of like what you did for what
the
was the one
Builder
you
site.
no, what was the one you did for me with what was that in? It was for listening to changes to the URL. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so basically run an action that actually sets the listener up on page load, right? Is that, or you could put it
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean,
page header, couldn't you?
if I had to do it right now, like really fast, if I was working on a project, I'd do a run JavaScript function and
Mhm.
I would just bind. I would say window, like bind window out of event listener scroll.
Yeah.
And I would say use the Bobby helper. It's like Bobby dot run action on page and like run an
Mhm.
action. Like that's like the quick and dirty way. Really what it should be is we should make a custom action that says like trigger on scroll. And we did it for the builder site already. So on the builder homepage, as you
Mhm.
scroll down, the things like fade in and slide in and stuff, that's an action it's not exactly saying like the scroll height by number, which is what you'd want for a nav, but that's saying when this element scrolls into view, run a flow. And all that
Oh,
flow
nice.
does is it adds a class. And so all the actual animation styles all controlled in CSS. And the action is just reading the scroll value and adding and removing a class. And that's kind of how it works. So, I mean, I could show it, like if we wanted to, we could do it now, but I actually realized after I answered that question, I can't quickly show that because we don't have that action done.
Yeah, it sounds like we need two actions then. We need one for change on position of scroll
Mm-hmm.
and one or run a flow on scroll position. And then the other one is run a
When an
flow
element
on
scrolls
this.
in or out.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I mean, you wanna do it?
That I mean, I'm
Yeah.
basically I added them to my list of things of actions we need, and I definitely think we should have it. So
I
yeah, at
mean,
some point I can just pop it out. Oh, you
I
mean right
mean,
now?
we got 40 minutes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
You wanna like, let's just, let's just show how this goes.
All right. Cool.
No pressure, no pressure.
I mean, we have some other things, but they're not, but this would be way cooler than like the other stuff is not. Yeah, I mean, it's stuff that's already dealt with too. So, oh, nice. Settings, mission control. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going right now.
So actually, what I should really do too, everyone get a glimpse at how crazy the builder project is. I should go in here and copy this first one. The way the builder one does it is actually more complex and is like a new JavaScript. I forget what it's called now, but it's like a new thing that reads the scroll element and gives like that reads when an element scrolls into view and gives you all these options. So it's a little more complex. I'm just going to go and I know I made a custom action for it on the builder project. I believe it's going to be this one. Oh, maybe not.
I saw a tweet yesterday that like somebody from I think it was on LinkedIn. It was a screenshot of LinkedIn. And this person was like, I've been faking that I was a programmer for years by just copying and pasting code from one place to another. You know, and the joke was, should we tell them? And,
That's exactly what I'm doing right now.
oh yeah, no, this is. I
This
mean,
is
I don't write code, but I can definitely copy paste. Good at that part of it.
So this is actually cool too, because what I'm doing, so like I came to the builder project and found this action function that I want. And all I have to do is copy the JavaScript and the JSON. I have a multi-paster, so I do that in one shot.
Unix.
There's several ways now to do this. Like what I'm doing, actually, you're right. I don't have to actually do this anymore because users have built things, ways to do this. It's crazy. I don't remember what I called this.
I remember when we did the thing where the toggle where you can say run this in the builder studio. When I asked for that, I remember one of our developers was like, are you sure? Because you realize what you're doing there, right? Like you're allowing a coder to do whatever they want inside of there. And if they just, they can basically overwrite anything. And I was like, yeah, that's like the point. I want them to be able to do that. I mean, that's the thing. Like guardrails are guardrails. So I don't want guardrails. If it's your project, it can only affect your project. That's really why it's okay. If it was able to affect projects that you didn't have access to, then it would be a problem.
Oh wow, it's kind of complex. I'm gonna do the same thing I just did and copy the JSON for the action type as well. I don't usually do that actually. I usually only copy over the function and then I make the action type my new each time for some reason. But that one has a lot of settings and I don't feel like setting them all, so I can just copy it. I don't even have to set this name because it replaces it when I paste, but I do that too. It's like you're seeing all my little quirks when I build. And then I just need to relink this up and this one's going to be good to go. And I remembered as I was looking at this that it's a little weird, this one, because it's like you call this action on page load and kind of like bind it, like you like set it up once. It's like it's not called, it's because it's on a scroll, so it's like a weird way you have to call it. Whereas you might expect to maybe like put like an on scroll event or something. Like Builder's not exactly set up in that way to do like a whole window scroll. So this one is like on page load, you just choose an element, choose a flow to run when it scrolls into view. And actually, I should probably look at it because there's more. It's pretty cool. It's like you can set like a threshold, so you can start the flow a little bit before it comes into view or after it's halfway into view or all the different kinds of things. So it's choosing a parent element, setting the margin, which is like I was saying, you kind of pad when it scrolls, visibility threshold. And these are all like, so actually, if I make this a real, before I make this real in the studio, I'll probably change these and add some descriptions into these. But these are all the real settings from this new, it's called intersection observer JavaScript. I don't actually know how new it is. I say it's new. It's new to me because I found it recently. But it's just all those settings and it translates. So it kind of like takes that JavaScript thing and translates it directly into this builder action. And then, like I said, you could just set this up. So on the builder site, I don't actually know if I'll be able to find where it's set up quickly, but there's probably like 10 of these set up in a row somewhere.
Let's do it on that page. Can't we make like, can we just do it? Like add like a giant div and then add another giant div and put some elements in them, so
that's kind of why I didn't set up. It's an annoying test to set up because you have to make a huge div, but I can figure it
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's like not really hard. It's just like, things seem
tedious.
hard.
Yeah.
But if I did something like this, we'll just make it.
We're like, 30 minutes away from having this as a real action. Like you clean up the arguments and I go write the descriptions on the element and the action types and go make it real.
Let's see. Trying to think of the best way to set this up so we can see it well. I'm just going to do like a little square and then scroll it into view.
There you go.
I think maybe do this. I'll just see if this works as I thought real quick. Should show one and then I can scroll another one up. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so this element is the trigger. And then we'll do, okay. The thing is, I don't totally remember what all these settings mean, but I think I can just leave this blank actually.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah. And then let's do a flow where let's like change the color or something.
There you go. So what's cool about this is you can run any flow you want. So that could be apply a class, it could be set a style like this, it could be hide and show something, it could literally whatever you want. Like when they
Normally
scroll.
for me, the flow that I run would add a class to this element. So it's like this element is blue and down here, and when it scrolls in, I would add a class. So kind of doing that here where I made a flow that just changes the style property. But really, if you're adding a class, you can change a bunch of style properties and maybe even like set some other stuff, like you could change text in it or whatever. So there's more you could do, but it's a pretty simple example.
You could also do some like stuff to troll your users where you, when they hit it, scroll them back to the top. Things like that.
So I don't know if this is going to work because those settings, but in theory, if I scroll as soon as this comes into view, it'll, instead of being blue, that bottom square should be red. No, it didn't work.
So
I
close.
probably just need to write root in that top one, I bet. Oh, it says fail to construct intersections or root margin must be specified. And this is the kind of thing like we'll fix this in the action so that you don't actually have to know that, but I probably have to do that. Yep.
There it is. Nice.
And so like this, I think, how can I tell? Can I tell?
Well,
I think that when I scroll this back down, it reverts. Oh, I guess it's not going to revert. Yeah, I'll have to add that. But
Yeah,
you can
have to
make it
do another
reverse. You
one.
can basically add one when it scrolls into view and then another flow when it scrolls out of view.
Yeah.
And this is like, this actually covers like the Webflow style. We don't get asked that much anymore now I think about it. We used to get asked about this all the time, which is like in Webflow, it's really easy to have a website where as you scroll down, things are like sliding into place, you know? And people love that. It's like a really quick win kind of. And this is basically the answer to that. We finally now have.
You know, what's funny too about it is like when I looked at how should we do it in a user interface way, right? And, you know, in the way that you sort of described earlier of, you know, on a scroll event on an element or something, right? And the issue that I take with doing it that way is it's not true to form, right? It's not true to, there is no such thing as that. Like there's no such thing as actually like throwing a scroll event there. But on the page, we could do something that's like show it as a scroll event or show it as scroll flows or something like that. The difference being, the only difference being that it would literally be the same thing. It's just like behind the scenes, we would be taking all the flows, like all the actions that you're putting in here, this action in the page binding, and just having like a hidden version of that, basically. Like if we were going to do it in that UX kind of way where they go, okay, I want this element to do this, they just define a set of actions and we're just running those in the page binding. And sort of true to form to builder, like I would rather teach someone how it actually works and show them the way. But there's always trade-offs to that, right? Trade-offs to that, that's the consistent trade-off that we're making all the time. But I think the action documentation that we're doing and showing that is enough, because what I would do if I wanted to have a set of these is I would make a flow called, you know, scroll animations or scroll flows or something like that, and then just nest that one into the page binding and then have all my different actions for all the different things that I want it to do. And you're really doing the same thing. Like you need a class in Webflow, you're setting up a class that does those animations, that does those changes, and then you're triggering it based on the scroll. So really the only difference for us would be you've got those classes. Here's how you apply them to the elements on scroll and then nest that whole flow in the page binding. So maybe I could do like as part of my use cases for this action is set up a nice version of that with like 2 or 3, and it doesn't really need to be much. Like almost all of it, almost all the ones that I see where people are doing it is like, move it up a little bit and maybe put a little drop shadow on it. Like that's kind of or like move the shadow around a little bit when it moves up, something like that.
The other thing you can do in that vein is like, if you have a list of features that you're using a grid row, you can like put this register scroll thing on the grid row. So you like put it once and it's just going to apply to all of them for you. So it's not,
that's really good.
Usually.
Yeah, I'll use that as one of I've been on some of those where I do the use cases. I'll do multiple use cases. And that one, I think I would do 2. Yeah. Because that's actually a fantastic use case. So as you're scrolling down the list, the rows are animating in whatever way you want as they come in and out of view, which would be really cool to see.
And it's like just as easy to set up. Because that's why I think the key is like people think it's too hard to set up, I guess, which really it's a little tedious. Like you said, there's advantages to it. But if you do it that gridless way, it's like just as easy as Webflow, if not easier, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, while we were talking, I remembered this threshold thing. I just thought I'd show it just because we're here. But basically, you have this element visibility threshold. It's just defaulting to 0, which is like as soon as it scrolls into view. But you could say like when it's half scrolled into view would be 0.5, or trigger when it's fully scrolled into view would be 1. And so it just looks like this. Like it'll switch to red after the bottom of the element comes up. So it's kind of a cool action. You can do a lot with it.
Yeah. Can you go above 1 in that?
You can, there's a way to do that. Let me try. I doubt this would work, but let's try it. I don't know if that was like maybe too high, but what you can do is
I mean, you could put it in a container, right? So
yeah, well, there's also one of these margin things is, but it's like what it's for. Maybe it's the parent element, or maybe it's this, but it's like if you did like, I don't know exactly what these values are, so this might not be right. But there is a way to cover what you're talking about. I think that did it 100.
That went to 1.
Negative 100. No, I'd have to look at the documentation for it. But yeah, there is a way to add that padding, and like you said, you could also just put a div with padding and do it yourself.
Yeah, that would be really nice to see it that way, because then you get the whole thing into view, or like mostly into view, and then you do a little animation. And then I guess you would need one on the exit too that does the opposite. It removes it. Is that how
I forget, because I did it for something before. I think you just do 2 of them. I thought originally that it was like on and off, but it's not. It's just like you run one flow when it comes into view and then another flow when it leaves you. I mean, you could do it like, if I did this, I think it would work. Actually, let's just try it. This would be cool. So we'll do, this one will be like when it comes into view, and we'll do this as change color red. Oops. And this is like green or something. Or I guess really I'd want to put this back to blue. Let's do that. Actually, I don't know if that makes sense, but whatever. So when it first scrolls in, we'll change it red, and then when it fully scrolls in, we'll change it back to blue. I think this actually isn't the use case. I think I twisted it in my head a little, but this is still kind of cool.
Yeah, same kind of thing. You're transitioning it over different, That
was weird. That first one didn't work, but then it worked, and then back to blue.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't go when you scroll back down, but there is a way to make it go when you scroll back down. It's all in there. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
So you can do when it's like, how would you set when it's out of view? Is that the same thing as what, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, is there a way to, I guess it's the same as when you go into view. It just changes it back to the original set. You know what I mean? Like it's going to go back to red when it goes into view.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think when it
so
scrolls out of view,
same.
like it's probably a situation where you can't actually see it and it doesn't actually
Yeah,
matter.
it doesn't matter.
If you wanted to
right.
maybe like queue it up for an animation or something, you might want to do something when it's out of view.
Yeah, I was thinking about
I know
if
there's a
you're
way, because I
changing.
did this whole thing. I did something where they slide in as you scroll and they slide out when you get, oh, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it's a little different. Where it's like as you're scrolling on the page, something will slide in and then
Yeah.
it'll slide out and the next thing will slide in. That has to
Yeah.
do with like all those different, you just add several for one element.
That makes sense, because then you're, yeah, because basically I was thinking about if you're positioning, right? If you're changing color, it doesn't matter because it's just changing instantly. But if
Mhm.
you're changing a position over a duration,
Mhm.
the next time you go to it, it's going to start from where it's at, you know?
And that
so
is
if you
actually
don't put it
what the
back,
default is like in Webflow and stuff. The first time you scroll down the page and everything animates in, they stay. I mean, you can change it, you
Yeah.
can make them animate out, but default it would stay. Same with this intersection observer in JavaScript, the default is it just stays.
yeah, that makes sense.
They
to
leave
me.
it open for you.
Yeah, you would need to tell it to like go back, you know?
Mhm.
And I guess you could actually trigger it to go back based on the next thing that you hit too, because it's
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
flow. So you just remove that class when you get to the next one, or add another class or whatever you want to do.
Yep.
Nice. All right, so let's make this one a real action too. Like we should, we can wrap this up afterward, you know?
Yeah, I feel like we should do it after, and all I'll do is just clean up these. Well, you'll have it anyway in the actions documentation, I guess. So we won't
Yeah.
really even need to do that much, but yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe like probably in the JavaScript, you know, if parent element margin is empty, put 0 pixels, or like if it's not a
Definitely,
valid, you know, whatever, then yeah, I mean, we could make that a number value also, like a forced number value.
I think you need the PX and there
Well, I mean,
might be
then
options, but I would do it just if it's
I
blank,
see.
make a 0 PX in the JavaScript. I do that all the time. Like most of my input arguments, I take them in from the input arguments and I just say it equals this, and then like the 2 bars for or, and then I put a
Yeah.
default value. So if it's
Yeah.
ever null, it's just going to use my default. Pretty much
Yeah.
covers all that. Because I don't know, you could probably put like M's in here and other
Oh,
stuff.
really?
Like I don't think it's, I don't know, but I don't think it's just pixels probably.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'd love to know more about the element visibility threshold.
Yeah,
Like if
I know it's 0
have-
to 1 for when it comes in, but I don't know what else you can do with it.
Mhm.
Parent element too is cool because like sometimes you're not scrolling the whole window, so there's just like a whole range of
Mhm.
stuff, and it's just mirrors JavaScript.
Nice. Awesome.
Do we oh, there's some chats too. I haven't been watching it, but there's also like we didn't do the original action we were talking about for the nav anyway. Like that's not.
Oh yeah. Let's go back to that. Good call.
Let me just check. I think we have one already that just sets a listener, right? Like I think it's for the states.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to add this so it comes into my project and I can look at it. So this flow is, it mirrors the run flow on page. So you choose a flow, you can choose to run on all or just that one, you can choose a variable. That's like what all this stuff is. Actually just copied that original run flow on page action. The difference with this one, if I tabbed it in, is it's wrapped in this listener for the window. So this one I'm looking at is for when the state changes, it's for something else. But I'm just going to copy this for the new action. Whoops. And this will be, I'm just going to call it window scroll event for right now. So I'll basically keep all this because all this is just going to run a flow that they select. But instead of on pop state and push state, whatever's here, I probably want to go, I'll look this up and make sure it's right before I do it. It's going to be something more like this. Oops. My JavaScript is rusty since I've been a builder. I don't think that's right. Let me look this up quick.
That's the goal. You look it up once and never look it up again.
It's so funny. I was actually thinking, I was like, wait, is it a danger that like my coding is getting rusty? And I was like, no, like I'm building so much more than I ever have, you know? What am I looking at here? Scroll function E, I just added that parenthesis wrong. All right, cool. Put that here, I believe. So I think it's pretty much just like that. And then I've got a few input arguments. I'm just going to copy them. Okay. And then I'm going to also copy the action type for speed. So that would be
That one. Yep.
actually can't wait till we upgrade this, like the UI of this part. It's like very low on the priority list, but all these screens look all the same to me. I always get so confused like I just did.
Yeah, especially the functions and the types. It's just like when you're in the same thing. Like I remember it when I go between like element types and action types, I know where I'm at. But the minute I'm like switching between those two tabs at the top, I'm oh, and you could also just duplicate it next time.
Oh yeah.
Just duplicate the action type because you
I
had
didn't expect to actually copy the action type, but I did that twice in a row today where I realized that there's like 4 properties and you have to set all the settings.
Yeah,
that's the thing that I usually do manually because I actually usually like to kind of like think about it and make sure it's like good UI basically. Oh, I need to update that last variable and then this will be done, I think. Variable, I mean ID. Does this matter if I change this? Am I going to break something by changing that?
Yeah, you need to match it. It needs to be, well, no, because you're not using it in anything else. You should change it for sure. Yeah, that's only for subsequent functions in the action type to reference the output of the previous function.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's put it here. Run flow on Windows scroll. And let's do
change
that. Oh, I forgot. I want to do more in this section where it checks if it's greater than, like gives you like scroll position. I forgot all about that. Well, let me just see if this runs. This is what I do whenever I need to test something. Make a flow that console logs that. Sometimes I'll write what it really is, or I'll put like a variable if I need it, but you can just put this console and it says it worked. And then I just use that to test. Very convenient.
Thank you, Fraser. Fraser asked for that one time and I was like, I'm just gonna go make that right now. Because it's funny because I would never use that. I would just like try, I would change that block to green or something at the top to see if it ran. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. But it looks like it worked.
Yeah, that's working, but it's running a million times on scroll, which it should, but that's working.
Yeah, it's like running as the scroll happens.
But what we actually want to do, I guess, is like output the scroll position maybe, or what I really set it up to be was running an action every time it scrolls, which is really not correct. We wanted to run an action only if on a condition or something like, well, I don't know what the best way to set it up is. So maybe,
I mean, it would be scroll position, right? Like what would be interesting to me would be to say well, I have 2 use cases, right? It depends on what I'm doing in the UX. Like, let's say I had a bar at the bottom, like a header that starts off as a fixed position at the bottom or something like that, or right underneath. And like when I hit something else or when that thing gets to a position, then I'll, run that up to the top. So like on scroll, I might actually run a condition. So like sometimes I might want to do what you had there, like just hit that event as the user is scrolling. I know it's like, you don't want to do a ton of stuff when that's happening, but if you're just doing like just a condition check, then you're probably okay. The other way that I would want to do it is like when I hit a specific percentage of the height of the page. or hit a certain position of the height of the page, either one of those. When
Mhm.
that occurs, then
It's
do
it's the
whatever you're
same
gonna
thing
do.
though. You're still just running a condition, right? So like really, instead
Yeah.
of me putting an action on this like I did, it should be like a thing where this should actually be built in the builder if you think about it. But
Mm,
it should just like as you scroll be giving you the scroll position as a variable, and then you do whatever you want with that. And
yeah.
it's your responsibility to not go crazy because it's running a million times or to throttle it yourself. That seems like the most kind of like robust way to build it. But really like the same way that we're always tracking your mouse position on the root variable. If now that I'm saying this, like we might as well track the scroll position in that case, and then you could just always query it. If you need it, you just say, does root scroll position equal this?
Mhm.
Because we have, in case that's not in case people don't know what that is. Oh, all right. At all times, like your mouse position there's a variable for window mouse position X and window mouse position Y. So it says these because it's the last time, it's like whatever was just last captured, but if like I move this around, they should change.
Yeah, I think we could actually combine that with another action too, like we have some conditions that are like specific condition user logged in, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. We could do something like that for this, where you could say condition scroll position, and then let you choose either percentage or specific spot. And if it's
Mhm.
percentage, then the JavaScript could just do the calculation for you,
Yeah, that'd
you
be
know?
cool. Mhm.
So then it's just a condition action, and the scroll, like you said, throw the scroll position into have it as a variable all the time. So you can do whatever you want with it on your own, but like the 80% use case would
Yeah,
be
we'll make
this.
like a easy UI helper type action. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. And then if
exactly.
you want to do advanced, you just use the variable.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so we'll get a task written for getting that into the core. That way it's just like on every page. And then I do have it in like the longer term list too, to have it to where you can turn those things off. Because right now, like no matter what you do, the mouse cursor position is being like pinged into a variable, like no matter what, the core is just doing that. And it'll be the same here. If we put it into the core, it's going to just do it. But really, we should allow you to turn those things off.
Just like IP address,
Yeah,
we allow like IP address
yeah,
defaults off, but you can turn it on if you want it. It's the
yeah,
same mechanism.
exactly. Yeah, I like that. I think maybe that's
Yeah, because
better
we can do a
than
buffer in
an
there
action
too. If we
here.
make that action, that'll help people. We can say like, don't you can have a setting, like so that it doesn't
Mhm.
run a million times. And I think that's the biggest thing because that's not. I mean, it's not super crazy, but it's not simple. People just know how to do.
Now that I just said that though, like the way to do it as an option is don't put it in the core at all and do this action, and then you're
Right.
done.
And then set
Do
your
an
own variable
action
basically.
instead and set an action into your page binding or into your page load that sets the variable of the position. And it's
Yeah,
literally
yeah.
just an action that says set variable of current scroll position.
Mhm.
And that's the option. Then it's not in the core, which is my preference, is to keep as much of that out of the core as possible. So
Yeah.
it's just smaller, smaller core, more options for users, all that kind of stuff. And actually, that's probably how the cursor position should have been done too. Is just do it as an action, you throw it into page load, and then we don't have to add more code and more things to the studio about remove that. Like, in a long time ago in our older versions of Builder, back when we used to use it for clients and stuff, everything was like inside of the elements and inside of the core. And the problem was you end up with like checkboxes to turn off all the options. It's like
Yeah.
checkboxes to undo the defaults that are there, it just becomes a mess. So like the default position we try to take now is keep it out of the core because you can't predict the use case, of the 15th person or the 150th person or the 1500th person, right? So yeah, maybe we'll do it that way. I think it's better, and it keeps it to where we don't have to. The other nice thing about that is we don't have to have release cycles around those changes. That's one of the other
Yeah.
reasons we wanted it so open ended. Is like now we just add the action, put it in the list, and anybody now has this option.
Just set it up to do that. Basically, now all I have to do is like when it scrolls up, like set a variable.
Yeah,
Which is a
so-
pretty easy thing.
So basically this would end up being 2 actions, right? And we probably should do one for cursor position too, a condition, a cursor position condition action, the same way that we're doing scroll position condition action. So then you have these.
So cursor position is also a little different because we all already have like when you run flows, I don't know if anyone even realizes this because it's like kind of deep in these custom actions, but we passed the event object all the way through now, and it was like a big change. I don't even remember when Darrell had to do that.
Yeah.
And the event object contains the mouse position in real time, which is actually better than the one we have that's set on the root. Like if you're on an element, it like doesn't capture it. It's like a weird little thing. So we built the mouse position even deeper into the core, but it's not really documented. So probably no one uses it, but we have that too.
Yeah, like when an action is triggered, the event that everything goes into the function in the queue. So and you have access to it in JavaScript. So you can know everything about the element and the current cursor's position. I don't know if it's relative to that element or relative to the window in that.
It's relative to the event, which is weird. So it's usually relative to the element because it'll be like based on the event that's triggered, but it could be different things.
Depends on what you're triggering it from. Yeah, that context is really important in the queue and you get into more complex action types.
What do you call this? Like, it's kind of like auto setting, right? Or it's like constantly set. You're not setting at one time.
Yeah.
It's like track scroll position variable. Maybe.
Yeah, that's good. And I have been modifying some action names and stuff when I go through and write the docs, just action names and input argument names.
Yeah, that's smart.
Just do it as we go. So I might change it as I write the docs for this one.
Do you want me to do this on the root, like force it on the root, or just like, I guess just let him pick a page, right?
I would force it on the root.
Oh yeah, I can force on the root.
They can always, because it'll just make the action simpler. If you really want it on a current page, you could always run an action afterwards that grabs it and sets it wherever you want. Yeah.
I'm not sure what options make sense here, but
for the is this the variable name?
yeah, I just like checked a bunch.
Yeah,
because it's like I've found that when I don't check them, I need them, and when you do check them, who cares?
Yeah.
And then I'm just gonna remove this and re-add it. Oh yeah, no settings. Set variable.
Nice.
Variable name, pages, root. Value from the function. Okay.
So, are you still in the action types? Yeah, I was gonna suggest maybe we explain like what you did there in the functions of that action type.
Yeah.
Just for others who don't see what's happening there. Yeah, go ahead.
So the first thing I did was set the input arguments because you need to use them in these functions, but any action, you can just chain together a bunch of functions, and you can use the, you can hard code values as the inputs into those functions. You can use the input arguments like variable name, or you can use the output of functions that have run before it. So the first function I ran was this window scroll event, and it doesn't have any inputs. So when I clicked on it, it's like blank under there. But it does have an output. It's going to read the scroll position. Actually, this isn't going to work. I just realized because I just bound it. It's not going to be. This isn't actually going to work. But if it was set up the correct way, it would be reading the scroll position and outputting it. So
Yeah.
then the next function I ran, I told it to wait for the previous one. And then I got the variable name. So this is setting a page variable, has specific inputs, has like name and value, name, page, and value. Got the name from an input argument, hard coded the page value, and then got the actual variable value I'm setting from the function output. But anyway, yeah, that function I just wrote, all I did was I bound it. Oh wait, yeah, I bound it, and then I had to return the scroll position. So it's only gonna happen once. It's gonna return that out of this function. So what I actually need to do isn't like so what I did, I can actually be even more clear. What I did was I built this action as custom function, then pre-built set variable function. And what I need to do is just use a custom function where I use the builder API helper to set the variable every time. So it's actually a pretty quick switch, and like it's a little, I guess I have the variable name here. So like I would basically put an input on the scroll event for the variable name and then be able to use it. That's how it's going to work.
Yeah, that's kind of the fun part about about the action types in Builder. Like I can go in and do the set variable thing way easier by taking the output of the previous function and doing the next thing, just because I don't really follow the code. But I know I can also just go into the code and go grab another function that uses the Boppy helper to set the variable and get it from get it inside of that function, so that I'm not having to use these two different functions, which is the better way to do it, because then you're just fewer
It's
things.
cool though with the more visual way and chain them together. Like as a coder at first I didn't like that, but I actually like that a lot better these days. It's just like more like visual basically. So I think this will have to be, I think I'll just do it like this and say, oh, and like I never know these things, these helpers functions, I always have to copy them.
I think we need to solve for that.
Well, it's being solved because these are all the stuff's getting documented now. And
well, I mean, in a code editor, like we need to
oh, that would be cool,
integrate it as packages inside code editors, so that you can just write it in your own editor. But we have provided all of these helper function documentations in line as you're writing it, and we don't have to, because really, and really the way that I want this to work longer term is this should just be pointing to a repository somewhere. Yeah, it's like, go over there and grab whatever that thing is and use it in here,
That'd be cool too, yeah.
And during the publish, we basically pull it, go pull wherever it is, and you have all the updated things. Or maybe not, maybe actually it's try a pull request inside the dev environment in the function. You go in there and do it from within there, and then the publish just takes whatever is we already have in that current revision and move it to the new one. Because it's like we're keeping our own state of all these things then inside of there, which would be better for like if you handed the project over to someone or something like that, it's like all contained inside of there.
All right. I'm not sure if this is actually gonna work yet, but we'll see. Basically, I scroll a little and then I can check this variable.
Undefined.
The thing that's weird too about this, like we'll need more, huh?
It said a variable. It's not the right
It
variable.
said it's undefined. That's probably because that scroll top, I probably need parentheses after or something. Like I said, I'm just rusty. And that might even be, I thought maybe that was just jQuery even, but I don't think it is. But I also realized even just getting this variable isn't all we need, because we still want people to have a way to trigger an action to run the condition. So I shouldn't have deleted all that. I should have kept both. But so we'll probably do a lot. We'll clean this all up after the office hours. And like I don't even know if I'll keep going at this point, but it's funny. And this is a good example of what happens constantly, where we have this idea like that's a simple action, I'll go build it. And then you end up building like 3 actions with a bunch of custom things, and now you have all this deeper thoughts about it. And usually for me, I'm like, I can't build this action now. This is a bigger topic,
Yeah. Yeah. And Fraser asked a question there about adding all those potential input types to an action, who's responsible, right? For like making sure that it all matches up, is sort of
Mhm.
the thing. I think that's the question. And correct me if I'm wrong, Fraser, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely on, like, I don't even see it as the person who wrote the JavaScript's responsibility. It's the person who's using that JavaScript in the action type, right? Because you can compose other functions inside of it. So like, and I've done this before where I'll see something that, like Darrell on our team wrote and something that Drew wrote. And I go, oh, I can make a new action type by combining those two things into this new thing that I need, right? So as long as those functions are written correctly and the input arguments are all defined and the output arguments are defined inside the function JSON, then when I go create a derivative action type out of it, I become responsible for making sure that all that's matched up, even though I didn't write the JavaScript. So I think there's layers to it. But yeah, it's definitely when you're building those action types and functions, you need to be thinking in terms of like, how will the user use this without understanding how any of this works, and it's like you're doing the interpretation of that code into the studio for people who don't know. So it's definitely on whoever's writing that action type, which is typically the JavaScript developer also. It's usually like, I'm probably one of the few like people who don't write any code who can and will go make like complex action types composing other people's code that I just assume is going to work. I think that's, most people.
That'll
probably
happen more though,
don't do
right?
that.
I think that is the ideal kind of, or not the
Yeah.
ideal, but like a very logical kind of like scenario is like a JavaScript developer that might not even care about Builder can just go into the function type there, or the action type function, and write all JavaScript, just like pure JavaScript, and all they care about is the inputs and the outputs. And you can actually explain that to someone, and they don't even have to know Builder in order to do that for you. So if we get to that point, because I don't think people are truly doing this yet, but if you get to that point, a visual developer could say, I need this thing to happen with this JavaScript, or this JavaScript library has these inputs, these outputs, and then they can get that code and they can go make their own, like from like more of a usability mind and less of like a code mind. You can go set up an action where you're thinking about what does the user need to know, what fields are going to hide and show, which is a totally different mindset. So I do think it's like a logical thing in the future that could kind of like fall into place that way, but I don't see it too much today. Really, like the people who write actions they write everything in the action because they know how to do it, and other people just don't do that.
I think right now Dorian and I are probably the only real exceptions to that. Eventually that will be more people as more non-coders get advanced in Builder, where they're pretty far along. But like Dorian and I will go do things like I'll make an action type but not have any functions in the action type. I'll just fill out all the input arguments and describe it all. And then I send that to one of my programmers and go, hey, so here's what I need it to do. And I already made the action type for you. They just go write the function or multiple functions, whatever it is, and then add those into the action type for me and put it all together. Right. And so that's a really nice way to do it too. Because everyone in here probably understands that problem of like having a customer say, I need you to do this in code, and then defining that really well. The action type is actually a very nice way to have that defined for what you want, because it's fairly rigid, so yeah. Well, thank you, Drew. I appreciate you going through all that. We'll get all these cleaned up over the next couple of days, hopefully, and get some new action types out. It sounds like we have 3 or 4 now.
Yeah.